اصمدي يا غزة العزة القاصف بيهون، رح ناخد بدار الشهداء البطل بمليون، إلك علينا هالعهد نحنا ما منخون، انت يا أرض السلام يا بلد الزيتون يا بلد الزيتون. أقصانا أقصانا أتعرفون من أنا؟ أنا شهيدة ابنة الشهداء، أنا من وقف في وجه الأعداء.
Je sais bien que vous voulez me faire taire et vous voulez une nouvelle loi pour nous faire taire, nous donner 5 ans de prison pour que la liberté d'expression soit muselée. On vous laissera pas faire. Vous m'entendrez jamais soutenir la Hamas. Par contre, ce qui me dérange beaucoup, c'est que ici, il y a des gens qui semblent ne pas considérer les actes israéliens, de l'armée israélienne aujourd'hui, comme des crimes de guerre.
Quels actes? Parce que pour l'instant, il n'y a pas...
Alors, depuis une semaine, il y a eu 724 enfants palestiniens tués à Gaza par l'armée israélienne. Israël a dit on va couper l'eau, l'électricité et la nourriture à Gaza, 2 millions de personnes. Crime de guerre. C'est interdit. Ils ont dit on veut que 1 million de Palestiniens dégagent. C'est un déplacement forcé. C'est interdit aussi. Et entre-temps, et on dit là, non mais Israël, on va le faire de manière humanitaire, on va faire des bombardements humanitaires. Vous savez que dans cette semaine, selon l'armée israélienne même, ils ont utilisé 6000 bombes sur Gaza, ce qui est un petit espace. Ouais. C'est environ autant de bombes que les États-Unis ont utilisées en une année en Afghanistan.
Je suis partisan d'interdire l'apologie du terrorisme.
Et c'est ce que fait le PTB à votre avis?
Exactement.
Soyons très clairs, ce que dit M. Ducarme ici est une ignominie. Vous devriez avoir honte.
Ah oui,
très clair.
ah oui, c'est moi l'ignominie.
Non mais vous me laissez même pas parler. Je sais bien que vous voulez une loi pour. Je sais bien que vous
n'avez même pas d'humanisme dans la manière de faire votre politique.
Je sais bien. Vous avez la parole.
Je sais bien que vous voulez me faire taire et vous voulez une nouvelle loi pour nous faire taire, nous donner 5 ans de prison pour que la liberté d'expression soit muselée. On vous laissera pas faire. Et soyons très clairs. Le droit de résistance, ce n'est pas le PTB qu'il défend. C'est dans le droit international. Il peut prendre différentes formes, ok?
Le terrorisme aussi, apparemment.
Il n'y a aucune justification. Je l'ai dit régulièrement, de manière répétée ici.
Au
terrorisme contre des populations civiles. Soyons très clairs. Et donc le fait que vous insinuez le contraire, M. Ducarme,
c'est ce que vous avez fait.
C'est dégoûtant.
Without distinction of any kind. As I said yesterday in my opening remarks, to discuss, and I am grateful to everyone in this room, committee members, civil society, and members of my delegation for your participation.
Look at what they do to free speech. There's an ethnic cleansing in Gaza, and all you do is tell lies about it. You and the rest of the media are warmongers. Every single one of you are all warmongers.
It's not always easy to speak in time like this. There has been too much violence and too much heartbreaking brutality. The escalations in the recent weeks is unbearable to witness. All lives are sacred and must be protected. The massacres need to stop. Families are being torn apart. What's clear now is that humanitarian aid to Gaza must be allowed immediately. The people there are in terrible conditions. The scenes at the hospital last night were horrifying. The people of Gaza need food, water, and medical supplies urgently. I'm calling in the world leaders to come together to prevent the further slaughter of innocent souls. Humanity must prevail.
Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta. My name is Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta. I am a plastic and reconstructive surgeon. I am a British Palestinian volunteer with Médecins Sans Frontières. This morning, upon the request of Al Ahli Hospital administration, I moved from Shifa Hospital to Al Ahli Hospital to help out with the treatment of some of the wounded, as the number of wounded had exceeded the number of beds in the hospital. We had been operating all day and had made the decision that in order to continue operating on these patients, I would stay behind and sleep at the hospital. In the evening, after we finished one of the surgeries, we heard a missile screech following by a huge explosion. As a result of the explosion, part of the ceiling of the operating room fell. As I moved towards the outside of the operating room and towards the emergency department, we could see bodies of children piled up, both dead, not moving, and wounded. There were several who had been amputated. I tended to a man who had his leg blown off at the thigh. We then carried on trying to resuscitate the patients. When the ambulance came, I decided to help out by carrying one of the wounded who had had a shrapnel in his neck into the ambulance. As I was walking towards the ambulance, there were body parts everywhere, and there were bodies piled up in the courtyard of the hospital. I then got into the ambulance and escorted the patient back to Shifa Hospital. This morning, when I drove into the hospital, I noted how full the hospital courtyard was, with families who had sought refuge inside the hospital, thinking that it would be a safe haven. It's these very same families who are now either dead or critically wounded as a result of this attack. This is a war crime that the world has seen coming. Israel has been warning the entire world that it was going to attack Palestinian hospitals, and it did exactly that. Every Western politician who has declared unconditional support for Israel's war effort on the Palestinian people has the blood of these children on their hands. That unconditional support is what led us to this massacre. The impunity that Israel believes it has from its Western allies is what has led to this massacre. No other country feels the impunity to target hospitals and get away with it. What happened today is a war crime, and if the Israelis get away with it again, then more war crimes will be committed and more hospitals will be targeted.
هذه الصور التي نطالعها معكم على الهواء مباشرة. الطفل الذي قطعت رقبته ورأسه، الطفل التي ما زالت تصمت حتى هذه اللحظة ولا تعلم أين أهلها. اعذروني، يعني المشاهد صعبة. نحن بشر في نهاية المطاف. هذه الصور التي نطالعها معكم على الهواء مباشرة. صور هذه الصور التي نطالعها معكم على الهواء مباشرة. الطفل الذي قطعت رقبته ورأسه، الطفل التي ما زالت تصمت حتى هذه اللحظة ولا تعلم أين أهلها. اعذروني، يعني المشاهد صعبة، نحن بشر في نهاية المطاف. أقولها على الهواء، هذه المنشورات كاذبة، هذه المطالبات كاذبة كاذبة. الوعود أن هذه المناطق لن تضرب ولن تقصف هي كلمات باطلة وكاذبة. الكل مات، كل من نزح من مناطقه وذهب باتجاه الجنوب قتل، قصف.
Shukran, Sayyid Rais. I take the floor on behalf of the UN Watch. My name is Mus'ab Hassan Youssef. I grew up in Ramallah as a member of Hamas. I address the words to the Palestinian Authority, which claims to be the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. I ask, where does your legitimacy come from? The Palestinian people did not elect you, and they did not appoint you to represent them. You are self-appointed. Your accountability is not to your own people. This is evidenced by your own total violation for their human rights. In fact, the Palestinian individual and their human development is the least of your concerns. You kidnap Palestinian students from campus and torture them in your jails. You torture your political rivals. The suffering of the Palestinian people is the outcome of your selfish political interest. You are the greatest enemy of the Palestinian people. If Israel did not exist, you would have no one to blame. Take responsibility for the outcome of your own actions. You fan the flames of conflict to maintain your abusive power. Finally, you use this platform to mislead the international community, to mislead the Palestinian society, to believe that Israel is responsible for the problems you create. Thank you.
Can't believe how gullible some people are. There's no such thing as Palestine. I can show you a map.
I've heard John Hagee tell his church there's no such thing as Palestine. And I have right here a Bible that's over 100 years old. And in the Bible maps, it says Palestine on the map of the Holy Land.
Which had been that way for a very, very, very long time.
And Doc, when I was in Jordan and I met with an extremely wealthy businessman who was Palestinian, he lost his home, his family estate. He lost it when the Jews took over Palestine in 48. He lost everything. This man is in his late 80s. He showed me on his wall, he had all these photographs on his wall. He had in a picture frame, he had his passport when he was a young man, and it said Palestine. He was a Palestinian, and he had a Palestinian passport.
And the Jews that moved to the Middle East in the 30s
had Palestinian passports.
Had Palestinian passports.
And then you'll have somebody like John Hagee stand up and tell a congregation, that's my Bible right there. That is is my Bible. Thank you, guys. That's the Bible I have in my office, and it says Palestine or the Holy Land. You can either call it the Holy Land or you can call it Palestine.
But it wasn't called Israel.
It wasn't called the Zionist state of Israel. The state of Israel is existing in the region of Palestine. So for John Hagee and these other Christian Zionists to lie and say there was never a place called Palestine, it's just...
And say it with a straight face, too.
They say, I know, they're just deceiving. They're propagandists for the Zionists. I wish they'd be advocates for Jesus Christ. I wish that they would work for Jesus as hard as they have lied for the Zionists.
Qui contrôle la meute médiatique?
Bien envie de savoir également.
Général de la Ward.
Vous savez bien.
Ah non, regardez,
je sais pas.
Question.
Qui contrôle la meute médiatique dans le monde et en France? Qui contrôle le Washington Post, qui contrôle le New York Times, qui contrôle BFM TV et tous les journaux qui viennent se grouper autour? Qui sont ces gens? C'est la communauté que vous connaissez bien.
Mon général. Je suis désolé. On peut pas laisser dire ça sur l'antenne.
Voilà pourquoi
je suis désolé.
Voilà
je suis désolé. Non, arrête là. On coupe, s'il vous plaît, on enlève le général. Voilà, merci, on coupe, on peut pas.
Pourquoi est-ce que vous n'avez pas qualifié le Hamas de mouvement terroriste? Parce que pour vous, c'est un mouvement de résistance? Je cherche l'explication.
Oui, c'est nécessaire.
C'est un mouvement de résistance, le Hamas?
C'est nécessaire d'avoir...
Est-ce que c'est un mouvement de résistance?
C'est nécessaire d'avoir des clarifications, parce que les mots sont importants.
Moi, je vis de clarification, justement. Est-ce que c'est un mouvement de résistance?
C'est un groupe politique islamiste qui a une branche armée et qui s'inscrit dans les formations politiques palestiniennes.
C'est un mouvement de résistance
qui a pour objectif la libération de la Palestine et qui résiste à une occupation.
Donc c'est un mouvement de résistance.
Oui.
Oui, c'est un mouvement de résistance, c'est ce que vous pensez.
Qui se définit comme tel et qui est reconnu comme tel par les instances internationales.
C'est un mouvement de résistance, c'est ce que vous pensez.
Au 9e jour d'une campagne de bombardement d'une violence sans précédent sur la bande de Gaza, Médecins sans frontières appelle les autorités israéliennes à faire preuve d'humanité. Mourir sous les bombes à Gaza ne peut pas être la seule option laissée à la population. Au nord, là où les ultimatums des Israéliens se sont multipliés, enjoignant la population de fuir sous peine d'être anéantie, la situation est dramatique. Parmi les gens qui n'ont pas pu fuir, qui ne savent pas où aller, se trouvent des collègues de Médecins sans frontières qui se sont terrés avec leurs familles sur place ou qui continuent autant que possible de soigner les blessés qui affluent dans les hôpitaux. Les hôpitaux sont débordés, Il n'y a désormais plus d'antidouleur. Notre personnel nous parle de blessés qui hurlent de douleur, de blessés, de malades qui ne peuvent se rendre à l'hôpital et de la terreur de se retrouver bombardés dans quelques heures. D'autres personnes nous racontent l'impossibilité, ne serait-ce que de sortir 1 heure pour aller se réapprovisionner au sud de Gaza, là où la population a été appelée à se déplacer par les autorités israéliennes. La situation est extrêmement difficile. Les gens s'entassent dans des campements précaires, improvisés, où l'accès à l'eau, à la nourriture est extrêmement problématique. Les bombardements continuent aussi au sud de Gaza. Ce que nos équipes nous rapportent, c'est une difficulté d'accès à l'eau qui s'aggrave d'heure en heure. Face à cette situation critique, nous demandons aux autorités israéliennes d'organiser et de maintenir des zones véritablement sûres où la population peut espérer être épargnée des bombes. Nous demandons aussi que soit organisée le plus rapidement possible une voie d'évacuation pour que la population qui cherche à se mettre à l'abri, qui cherche à fuir, puisse le faire. Nous demandons également que soit rétabli de toute urgence l'accès à des services de base essentiels et notamment l'accès à l'eau potable. C'est de la survie immédiate de centaines de milliers d'êtres humains, des hommes, des femmes, des enfants, des vieillards, des blessés, des malades, du personnel soignant, du personnel humanitaire dont il est question aujourd'hui.
I tried to correct you to the answer. The war is not just with Hamas. The war is with all the civilians that...
Bon día, egunon, vos días. Me dirijo a todas vosotras y vosotros con el corazón absolutamente encogido por las imágenes que nos llegan desde Palestina. Desde Podemos no somos indiferentes al atroz sufrimiento que el pueblo palestino lleva viviendo durante décadas. Hoy queremos alzar nuestra voz para denunciar que el Estado de Israel está llevando a cabo un genocidio planificado en la Franja de Gaza, dejando sin luz, sin comida y sin agua a cientos de miles de personas y llevando a cabo bombardeos sobre población civil que son un castigo colectivo, incumplen gravemente el derecho internacional y pueden considerarse crímenes de guerra. Ante esto, Estados Unidos y la Unión Europea no es solo que miren hacia otro lado, es que están jaleando al Estado de Israel en su política de apartheid y de ocupación que vulnera gravemente los derechos humanos. Usar los terribles asesinatos de civiles israelíes por parte de las facciones armadas palestinas como excusa para justificar los crímenes de Israel en general y la masacre en Gaza en particular es algo absolutamente inaceptable. El Estado de Israel, su primer ministro y su partido han reconocido en numerosas ocasiones que promocionaron a Hamás para debilitar a los sectores laicos de la resistencia palestina. Usar a Hamás como una excusa para asesinar millares de civiles palestinos, incluidos niños y niñas, es de una hipocresía incalificable, tanto por parte de Israel como de los países que le justifican. Por todo ello, en nombre de Podemos, quiero plantear 4 exigencias muy concretas y muy urgentes. En primer lugar, y de forma prioritaria, se tienen que establecer corredores humanitarios que permitan la salida de civiles y la entrada de la ayuda humanitaria y de los equipos de emergencia. Necesitamos medios y recursos para la protección de la población civil, sin excepción y sin demora. En segundo lugar, solicitamos a nuestro socio, el Partido Socialista, que trabajemos juntos para presentar desde el Gobierno de España una petición ante la Fiscalía de la Corte Penal Internacional para que se investiguen los crímenes de guerra cometidos en Palestina por Netanyahu, como se hizo recientemente en el caso de la cooperante española asesinada en la guerra de Ucrania, así como los perpetrados por Hamás en Israel y los territorios ocupados contra población civil. En tercer lugar, la Unión Europea debe dejar de ser cómplice de un criminal de guerra como Netanyahu, actuar con autonomía y cambiar sus discursos y sus acciones. Para ello es urgente reconocer públicamente que lo que estamos viendo en Gaza son crímenes de guerra y que las vidas de las palestinas y los palestinos importan. Israel tiene que sentir la presión internacional para que ponga fin a los bombardeos, mediante todas las medidas que estén a nuestro alcance, como el embargo de armas o las sanciones a los responsables de los ataques. Y, en último lugar, la Unión Europea debe desplegar todos sus esfuerzos diplomáticos para terminar con la ocupación y el apartheid por parte de Israel sobre Palestina, que es la causa profunda del conflicto que se expresa en el día de hoy. La Unión Europea puede y debe buscar la complicidad de países que tengan capacidad de interlocución con todos los actores del conflicto, especialmente aquellos países del sur global, para promover una salida negociada que asegure una paz justa, duradera y estable en la región. Solo así vamos a poder proteger todas las vidas, una salida negociada.
Can you tell us why you're here? With God's help, we've come from the religious Jewish community, the ones who are true to the Torah, to reveal to the world the truth that the state of Israel does not represent Judaism. It represents nationalism, a movement that was created by people who had the selfish ambitions, non-religious Jews, people who went against God, who are heretics, who rebelled against the Torah. As a Jewish people, we are to emulate God, to be compassionate. We are forbidden, according to the Jewish religion, to have our own sovereignty. We are forbidden to oppress a people. We are forbidden to in any manner have our own state and rebel against the nation, to in any way go up in mass to the land of Israel. Especially, it would be forbidden for us if the land would have been uninhabited. But they have compounded their terrible crime against God, being that they decided to create their nationalism, the state, the Zionist movement, the state of Israel, in a land that was occupied, a land that was inhabited by a people. What they're doing is pure nationalism. It has nothing to do with the religion, but they're using the religion. They've taken the identity, the Star of David. They've taken the name Israel simply to legitimize their crime, their terrible atrocity, their Nakba, what they're doing to the Palestinian people.
Okay, what solution do we have to end this conflict now?
The first thing is people have to know the root cause of the problem. They must understand that this is not a religious conflict. We have been living together hundreds of years, Jews and Arabs, Jews and Muslims. It's not a religious conflict, and it's not a rift between the people of different religions. It's the reason for this conflict is because of a selfish, flawed political movement of Zionism. If people understand the problem, then they will be able to work out the solution so that Jews and Muslims and Arabs can live together in peace, and we can't do that. It's a relatively new movement, Zionism, of only 100 years. And it's thousands of years of living together. If you take away this impediment to peace, then we can live together. It can be done. And now we can't live just as South Africa. The apartheid state ended and blacks and whites were able to live together. We can live together. We will live together because this is God's will. We are here because our hearts are rent. Because we are crying. Because we feel the suffering of the people.
أنا تركت بيتي في منطقة غرب غزة، وهي منطقة معروفة. يعني كونت بيتي على مدار سنوات طويلة، والآن أنا أعلم تماما أن بيتي لم يتبقى منه حجر واحد. لقد تم استهداف هذا المنزل وإزالته عن بكرة أبيه. بعض المشاهد تتحدث عن أن حتى بعض بقايا المنزل وبقايا الأثاث، ملابس أطفالي كلها متفجرة ومتفحمة. هذه المشاهد لا أستطيع أن أتخيلها، حتى مجرد خيال. منزلي الذي بني على مدار سنوات طويلة، أحلام أطفالي وغرفهم، كل تفاصيل هذا المنزل ذهبت أدراج هذه الصواريخ الاحتلالية للأسف. يعني أحمد الله أنني بخير أنا وزوجي وأطفالي وعائلتي، ولم أفقد عزيزا حتى هذه اللحظة، ولم أفقد تماسكي حتى هذه اللحظة لأخرج إلى وسائل الإعلام وأتحدث عن هذه التجربة المريرة. نزحت إلى المنطقة الشرقية، وهي المنطقة الموازية للمناطق الغربية، علها تكون آمنة أكثر، ولكن للأسف بعد 4 أيام من النزوح تعرضت إلى قصف إسرائيلي مكثف وإلى مجازر إسرائيلية كانت بجوار منزلي. تعرضنا فيها إلى شظايا الاحتلال الإسرائيلي وإلى زجاجه وإلى ركام المنازل المتناثرة على رؤوسنا ورؤوس أطفالي. طفلي أخرجته من بين ركام المنزل يعني الذي كان متواجدا بجانبي، والحمد لله نجونا وخرجنا من المنطقة الشرقية نزوحا لمرة أخرى إلى منطقة دير البلح، وهي المنطقة الوسطى، ونأمل أن لا نعيش تجربة نزوح أخرى، ونأمل أن نبقى بخير حتى هذه اللحظة. أنا أحضن أطفالي في كل مرة وأشم رائحتهم في كل مرة، وأتمنى أن لا يغمضوا أعينهم على الإطلاق. يعني أتمنى أن أراهم مستيقظين في كل ثانية حتى يطمئن قلبي. أنا أحضنهم في كل ثانية حتى أتمكن من أن أحفظ رائحتهم جيدا، وأن أحفظ تفاصيلهم جيدا، وأن أحفظ ملامحهم وضحكاتهم. يعني أخاف أن أمر بتجربة مرعبة كمن أشاهدها الآن وفي كل لحظة في هذا المستشفى، عائلات تودع أبنائها وزوجاتها وأصدقائها. هذه التجربة مريرة ومؤلمة بكل ما أوتينا من قوة، لن نستطيع أن نعبر عنها، ولو بقينا لسنوات نتحدث عنها لن نوفيها حق هذه التجربة المؤلمة.
Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. I'm here with Rabbi Yisrael Dovid Weiss. He supports Palestinians, and I'm going to ask him why that's so. Rabbi, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you, and it's an honor, a privilege to be on your program.
No, it's wonderful to talk to you. So tell me, Rabbi, why do you oppose the state of Israel, first of all, and why do you support Palestinians?
Okay, first I pray to the Almighty that He bestow upon me His truth, His wisdom, that I may be worthy of conveying His message and so sanctify His name. It's not my personal opinion. What I'm representing, with God's help, is the opinion of the very religious Jews around the world, including in Al-Quds in Jerusalem, including throughout Europe and throughout the world, basically. We as a Jewish people have made a covenant with God 3,000 years ago on Mount Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu and Moses went up and took the Torah from God, and we made a covenant to uphold the Torah. That is what Judaism is all about, to uphold this covenant, to be close to the Almighty, to be subservient to the Almighty. This movement, the concept of creating a state sovereignty, and what they want to call a Jewish sovereignty, that concept, is a movement that started around 150 years ago. It is a transformation from subservience to God into nationalism. Have a piece of land, to be a nation amongst nations, to be comparable to all the great countries. Now, that in and of itself, even if it would have not affected the Palestinian people, the inhabitants, the indigenous people, in other words, if the land would have been uninhabited, it would still be forbidden for the Jewish people to have this concept of sovereignty, of a nationalism, because we have a long history. We made the covenant with God 3,000 years ago to uphold the Torah, and we were then commanded to go into the Holy Land and build a temple, which King Solomon built a temple. But we were warned by the Almighty and instructed by the Almighty that we have to be on a very high level of spirituality. If not, then we will be driven from the land. And that came around 2,000 years ago. the Romans and the Greeks, they came, they invaded the Holy Land, and the Jews were driven from the land as a nation. Once that happened, we were put under a decree of exile. And so for 2,000 years, we're under a decree of exile by the Almighty, meaning that we are told by the Almighty that it is His will that we should not be the sovereign nation. We should be loyal citizens in every country we're residing. And we should not attempt to return en masse as a large group of people, or try to recreate even one small 1 inch, 1 centimeter of a Jewish sovereignty. Because it is like medicine from God to break our haughtiness. That's what we believe. So there is actually we were put under 3 oaths, and that King Solomon, who built the temple, wrote a book of prophecies called Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, and he speaks about these 3 oaths that God put us under. One is that we should not return en masse to the Holy Land once we were dispersed amongst the nations. Secondly, we are not to rebel against any nation. We have to be loyal citizens in every country we reside. A Canadian citizen has to pray for the well-being of the country, even if you're not happy, or let's say throughout our history, Jews were many times forbidden to buy land and they were taxed to a much higher degree. Still in all, we have to be loyal citizens and not rebel against that country. Thirdly, we are not to make any attempt to end exile. Why? Because it's because of our sins we are spread out. God is compassionate. And the Almighty, when the time will come, which every Jew yearns for, that the time will eventually come, with the Almighty will make a metaphysical change in the world, and all humanity will recognize one God. Then God will return us, and God Himself will rebuild the temple without any human intervention. There will be a spirit, like a miraculous spirit in the world that will stop being atheists and so forth. Everybody will believe in God. It says, all the nations will hold hands and join to serve God. That will happen. Then we will return and we will become close to God again in His heart.
How does that come about? Like, how would you know that we're in that state?
We will know that because, like I said, there will be a spirit of holiness, of godliness. There will be a spirit of people returning. The Messiah. See, obviously the Jewish and Muslim people have a distinctly different concept of what the Messiah is, Mashiach. But we believe, but that's really neither here nor there, because what will happen, it will happen. And we were never deemed a threat for the Muslim people because of the difference of our approach, because we are clearly, as I've mentioned, we are forbidden to make any attempts to return. We just believe and we pray to God constantly that He should bring about this end day, and when all humanity will serve Him. So we yearn to return. We yearn with all our hearts. We say it every day in our prayers that we want. But we haven't. For 2,000 years, we patiently wait and we serve God, upholding the Torah, the covenant, in every land where we are, being loyal citizens and so forth. Zionism was created by mostly non-religious Jews. It was a nationalist movement of people who estranged themselves from God, from the Torah. They were non-religious. I always like to carry around a picture of the first, this was the Declaration of Independence, the first Prime Minister, David Ben-Gurion, and they're making a so-called Jewish state, 1948.
Yes.
And so it's Jewish. Supposedly they're doing us, they're returning to God. They're saying it's the end of exile, and not one of them is covering their heads. You know, so you see what the falseness of it. But still in all, the Zionists, they put on a facade and of Judaism. They incorporated religion in order that the world should say, oh, it's a religious thing, we have to support them. The evangelistic Christians and the millions and millions support them.
Hamas is not a terrorist group.
Oh, it isn't, ma'am.
First of all, Hamas is not a terrorist group. Hamas is not a terrorist group.
What is it, like a motorcycle club?
It is a resistance that has been fuming for 75 years of colonialism, of occupation, of murder, of rape, of little children, of women. That's what they are. They're resistance.
Do you think Canada is a colonialist country too?
Everything that they do is justified.
Including what happened last week?
Every single thing they have done is justified.
Ma'am, there were children murdered. There were babies beheaded.
Babies beheaded, really? Please educate yourself.
Well,
please check the news, because as a news reporter, you got to check the fucking news. because they said that shit was fake, okay? Multiple times. Different channels, even Biden himself, his ministers and his idiots said himself that news was fake. So, there's no 40 beheaded babies.
And there were no 1,300 deaths in Israel?
There's no evidence. There's no photos whatsoever. Hamas is a Muslim group. They would never do that because it's against Islam. That's number one. And that's something that they show.
Do you really believe that?
There is evidence of Israeli women saying that they gave us water, they gave us food, they gave us a place to sleep comfortably. They gave us clothes. They got them to cover up out of respect. This is actual women having interviews talking about when they were hostages or when they were taking in, when Hamas members were coming into their house. These are actual Israeli women saying this is how they were. Even at some point, a Hamas fighter told one of the women, "Can I have a banana to eat?" He asked if he could eat a banana that was in her home. Does that sound like a fucking terrorist to you?